How could he do this? That's the question echoing through every corner of the WWE universe right now. Not just a question, an outrage, a betrayal, a scandal so raw and so disturbing that fans are left asking if this man we've admired, cheered, and trusted for years, has finally crossed a line he can never come back from. Seth Rollins, the visionary, the architect, the so-called locker room leader, a man who built a career off calculated risk and charisma, is now being whispered about in the most damning terms possible. Because what happened between him and Becky Lynch wasn't just an argument. It wasn't just a heated moment backstage after a show. This was something so ugly, so physical, so utterly inexcusable that even WWE officials, people who've covered for a lot of locker room drama over the years, are scrambling to contain it. This wasn't a storyline. This wasn't a camera trick. This wasn't the usual couple drama, smoothed over by a few interviews and photo ops on social media. No, this was real. This was raw, and it ended with one of WWE's most decorated female superstars, the Becky Lynch, being rushed to the hospital after a shocking backstage altercation with her own husband. Now, before you think, no way, not Seth, not Becky, they're the golden couple, I want you to sit down and hear this through. Because once you know the timeline of what went down, once you hear from the people who were right there when it happened, once you understand the level of chaos and betrayal that unfolded, you're going to feel that same gut punch fury every single WWE fan is feeling right now. The night started out like any other high-stakes taping. Becky was scheduled for a big segment, a verbal face-off with Rhea Ripley that was supposed to set up a huge match for the next premium live event. Seth, meanwhile, had his own match earlier in the night, a tense bout against Drew McIntyre that ended in controversial fashion. From the moment Seth walked backstage after that match, crew members said something was off. He wasn't just in post-match adrenaline mode. He was pacing, muttering under his breath, eyes darting in that way that told everyone he was simmering with frustration. One source told us Seth was already irritated because Becky's segment had been moved to close the show instead of his match getting the spotlight. He's been sensitive about that kind of thing lately, they said. When you've been the guy for so long, and suddenly your wife is the one closing shows, it can mess with you if your ego's fragile. From there, things spiraled. According to eyewitnesses, Seth approached Becky in the gorilla position just minutes before she was set to walk out. What started as a low-voiced conversation quickly escalated. Becky, still in full gear, tried to brush him off, clearly not wanting to get into a personal argument seconds before going live. But Seth followed her, gesturing wildly, his tone rising. Crew members looked at each other, unsure whether to intervene. Then, according to two separate sources, the unthinkable happened. Seth stepped in too close, Becky pushed him back, telling him to calm down. And that's when Seth shoved her. Not hard enough to knock her to the ground immediately, but hard enough that she stumbled back into a production crate, hitting her shoulder with a sickening thud. The sound made everyone freeze. A hush fell over the gorilla position. Becky winced, grabbing her shoulder, and for a moment it looked like she might try to walk away. But Seth, still furious, leaned in and said something that multiple witnesses described as vicious, and the kind of thing you can't take back. Whatever those words were, they hit Becky harder than the shove. She turned pale. She tried to speak, and then crumpled to one knee. That's when chaos exploded. Officials rushed in, separating Seth from Becky, yelling for medical staff. A trainer was at her side within seconds, checking her shoulder and neck. Becky was in obvious pain, her breathing shaky. She kept saying, I'm fine, but the medics weren't taking chances. They put her arm in a sling on the spot and called for a transport to the nearest hospital. Seth, meanwhile, was escorted away by two security guards. And here's the thing. He didn't fight them. He didn't plead his case. He didn't even look back at Becky as they walked him out of the building. That silence, that lack of visible remorse, might be the thing that turns the fans against him more than anything else. The arena's atmosphere was absolutely suffocating as more and more details began to leak. Fans weren't just gossiping. They were outright furious, demanding answers from WWE, from Seth himself, and even from the people who witnessed it backstage. The truth was slowly being pieced together, but what emerged painted an even darker picture than anyone could have imagined. Apparently, Seth and Becky had been having tension for weeks, something that insiders claimed began when creative started pushing Becky toward a singles run that would put her on a different brand. Seth, who's been vocal about his distaste for certain booking decisions, allegedly felt blindsided by the move. But according to those who saw them together in catering last week, that wasn't the only problem. There were deep personal issues brewing. Multiple superstars who spoke off the record said that earlier that day, Becky confronted Seth about something private, something that seemed to set him off. Words escalated. Their voices got louder. And then, in a moment no one expected, Seth reportedly shoved a chair in frustration, one that ended up clipping Becky in the ribs. She went down instantly. That's when chaos erupted. Officials ran in, separating them, while medical staff rushed to Becky's side. She was holding her side in obvious pain, barely able to stand. Seth's face. Stone cold. No apology. No panic. Just this strange, locked-in glare, like he knew something had just changed forever. By the time security escorted Seth to another room, Becky had already been placed on a stretcher. Reports say she was still conscious but visibly shaken, telling the medics that her ribs felt like they were caving in. WWE immediately arranged for her to be taken to a nearby hospital. Fans who saw the ambulance leaving the arena couldn't believe what they were witnessing. Seth Rollins, the man who publicly calls himself a proud husband, was now the center of one of the ugliest incidents in WWE history. And here's the part that will absolutely boil your blood. Seth didn't even ride in the ambulance with her. Nope. He stayed in the arena, sitting in a secluded hallway, head in his hands but saying nothing. No remorse, no explanation. Meanwhile, cameras caught Becky being wheeled away, barely lifting her hand in a wave to fans waiting outside, her face pale from both pain and heartbreak. Word spread like wildfire online. #FireSeth started trending on Twitter within minutes, while WWE's PR team scrambled to control the story. Some fans accused WWE of trying to downplay the incident, others demanded a public statement immediately. And while we waited for that, more disturbing rumors began to surface about Seth's behavior in recent months. The cameras had been off for just 5 minutes. The weight of what just happened in crushing her more than the actual impact of the shove. Trainers rushed in. She could hear Seth pacing around, and Becky muttering curses under his breath, but not once did he come to check on her. And the thing that made everyone's blood boil, deliberate, Seth wasn't even showing regret, was more painful than the bruise forming on her muttering under his breath. And this is where everything becomes absolutely infuriating. Because instead of trying to make things right when it happened, next yelled at Seth from across the hall, "Are you proud of yourself?" Within hours, news started leaking online. Looks like not from Becky. Seth not from her friend. His voice cold. Stay out of this. It was Seth himself who took to social media what's going on, trying to control the narrative. The thing. Everyone had an idea. Everyone sent the wrestling world into a heard the shouting escalate. The people the words cut deeper, and then the shove that sent Becky into that everyone's got their breaking point. Medical staff loaded Becky onto a stretcher. He knew exactly what he was doing. It wasn't just pain. He was painting himself. It was a betrayal. Without mentioning Becky's name in the ring, but knowing full well the entire WWE, the man she stood by for years, now being the reason she was began asking an ambulance. Instead of clarifying, those red emergency lights flashed across the hallway. Videos, the WWE with other wrestlers watching from as if nothing had started to realize. Meanwhile, this wasn't part of any story. She was in a hospital bed. This was as real as it gets. Exhausted, and the whispers started immediately. Close friends say she refused visitors had been under insane pressure for anyone to see her like matches. Dealing with the fact that Seth went about his feeling overshadowed by Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes shows just how cold others said there had been tension in the marriage for months. And the worst part, no one expected it to spill into something this ugly. Don't think for a second Triple H arrived. The medical reports said at hospital were clear. No grin. This wasn't some minor slip or accident. Just pure anger. This was a full-blown physical altercation. Grabbed Seth by the arm and dragged him into his office. Some wrestlers were furious. People nearby swear they heard women's shouting so loud it shook the wall. Charlotte Flair reportedly confronted Seth in catering. You don't know the full story. If that had been Triple H firing back, you wouldn't even be walking around here right now. The whole locker room just watched. And she wasn't the only one. Hospital. Bayley unfollowed him on Instagram the same night, Charlotte which fans instantly noticed. And Bianca Belair stood together, shockingly shaken. Despite all this backlash internally, he's not suspended for this. Then what message does that send to everyone here? Why? And because Seth is still one of WWE's biggest Becky anymore. He's a moneymaker. This was about the kind of environment money often talks louder than morale moving forward. That's the ugly truth. When Seth finally came out of Triple H's office, his face was pale but still enough to the brand. They will find ways to protect to be rolling, even if it means silencing victims. Caught the moment Seth walked straight out of the building without looking back, without going to hospitalization, without so much as checking knowledge on WWE programming. No, get well soon package. No commentary mention. Nothing. Instead, they quietly removed her from upcoming live events, citing personal reasons. Personal reasons. She was assaulted by her own partner, and they're sweeping it under the rug like it's a scheduling conflict. And here's where fans got even angrier. Seth's merch sales skyrocketed that week. Whether it was from controversy or from his hardcore fans refusing to believe the allegations, WWE was making money. And when there's money to be made, corporate suits look the other way. But for how long? How long before the truth becomes too loud to ignore? Because here's the thing. People talk. And those sources close to Becky are saying she's done. Not just with Seth, but possibly with WWE entirely. The betrayal cuts too deep, the trust is shattered, and if WWE's not willing to stand by her, why should she continue breaking her body for them? And if she walks, make no mistake, it's going to be loud, it's going to be public, and it's going to blow the lid off everything. We're talking about potential lawsuits, public statements, maybe even legal action against Seth himself. This isn't just gossip anymore. This is a career-altering, life-changing situation. And the moment Becky decides to speak, it will be game over for Seth Rollins' visionary persona. Because no matter how many championships you've held, no matter how many arenas you've sold out, when you put your hands on someone you love in anger, you've crossed a line you can never uncross. And here's the part that's going to get people talking even more. Word is, Becky's closest friends are telling her to go public now, not later. They believe Seth's already spinning the story to make her look unstable, to make her seem like the aggressor. But the hospital reports, the private messages, the security camera footage from their own home, oh, those tell a very different story. And if those ever see the light of day, Seth's entire image could come crashing down in a matter of hours.